my argument about Veganuary is that every month now has to be something.
This is a graph of how signups have increased since the first campaign in 2014, with 3,300 signups all the way up to 2024, where they had 25 million.
Red meat is good for you and helps reduce tiredness and fatigue as part of a healthy diet. When I first saw these ads today, I thought it was an April Fool's prank, but they are deadly serious. This is a sophisticated advertising campaign designed by the companies who sell red meat to convince you to eat more red meat.
The animal agriculture industries have made attempts to push back against the success of Veganuary, with Veganuary being the most well-known.
They've done a brilliant job, the meat industry, unfortunately. Processed red meat is a class 1 carcinogen. Well, we did Cluckquit of the month then, didn't we? So people could vote on which was the biggest Cluckquit.
Do you think, it's important to have a laugh?
Yeah, so we put them on, busted them on the underground and had telephone boxes, didn't we? And loads of people were just sharing them on social media and getting quite a lot of joy from them.
On this episode of Meet the Vegans, I'm going to be talking to vegan royalty Matt Glover and Jane Land, co-founders of Veganuary and Generation V, and so much more in between. We're going to be talking about how to build a successful movement, what effective activism looks like, and what is next for the vegan scene. I can't wait to have this conversation. I hope you enjoy listening to it. It's streaming now on all platforms. So, welcome, Matt and Jane, to Meet the Vegans. I'm so happy to have you with me here today. It's like having vegan royalty in the house, if you don't mind me saying. Co-founders of Veganuary and Generation V, amongst many, many other things, all of which we shall talk about. Thank you for joining me today. How are you both?
Not bad.
Very British response.
Not bad. Yeah.
Very well, thank you.
It's great to be here, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Now, you are publicly known as the founders of Veganuary, probably one of the hugest vegan campaigns in global history, I would say. Was it 25.8 million people who participated in January this year? Am I right?
25.8, that's correct, yeah.
That is just enormous.
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all. It's not bad at all. And am I right in thinking Veganuary is now in the dictionary?
It is. Was it the Collins English Dictionary?
That was the first one.
The first one, yeah. So it's definitely in that one.
I mean, that's just sensational to start a campaign that has that much participation globally and then also makes it into the dictionary. It's totally sick. Did you ever imagine when you started it would take on at the pace it has?
I expected it to be bigger than this by now.
There's a we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, Sarah, the dynamic between us, but Matthew is very much the optimist and big ideas, and I think realist, grounded,
yeah.
Like trying to put in the strategy behind those big ideas in the background. So we've made a good team over the years.
I think so.
But are you not happy with your 25.8 million this January, Matt? Or is that just a drop in the ocean? Did you want more?
Well, originally we were doubling every year. So which is easy when the first campaign, we had 3,300 people took part. And then it was 12,000, then it was 24,000. And it was averaging doubling every year. And back then I worked it out. If we carry on this trajectory, that by 2028, everybody in the world will be doing Veganuary. And we've not managed to keep up to that pace, have we?
Shocking performance. You've been slacking off, the pair of you. Did no one say it may flatline after a little while, Matt?
Well, I think maybe Jane did.
Tried to voice that opinion in the background, told us to be silent.
So what's the kind of increase now that you're on year?
So it is slowing down, as you'd expect when you get to these sort of numbers. So last year it was 25 million. So we've edged up a bit, and I think the growth that we're seeing mainly now is internationally. So we've taken on a couple of new partners this year. We've got Canada was new on board, just about to launch V-March in China this month. So it's all very exciting. But in terms of other growth statistics, we've got with things that we measure in terms of media coverage and product releases, they're still growing, and that's become much more of a strategic focus for us. Whereas in the start, it was all about how many people can we get signed up. It was an individual dietary pledge, and we've put a lot more focus on those other elements because they are just as important.
Why do you think it took off in the way that it did? Because there'd been lots of vegan campaigns before this, but nothing that really captured the public imagination in the same way. What was the secret sauce? That's going to trigger you to say something funny, isn't it?
No. I think one of the things one of the reasons why it worked is in the UK we have precedents like Stoptober, Movember, Dry January, where people collectively do something that's potentially good for a month. So I'd taken part in Movember previously, and the original idea was to try and replicate that, but do something great for animals. So, we had Vegan January, we merged it together to create this word, and people in the UK immediately understood it. It didn't need a lot of explaining. The media thought it was quite interesting and exciting, so they picked up on it pretty quickly. The brands, the retailers all saw the potential in it, and I think the key element, the secret sauce, was the community. The vegan community really got behind it as well, and so they were pushing their friends and their family to get on board. So I think we just sort of lit the match really, and then friends, family, movement really took it to the next level.
Yeah, as Matthew said, it was a timing issue, having that named month where you could get collective unity to get behind something really worked. And I think the branding itself, it was kind of unique at the time. There was what you typically associate with veganism was a lot of greens and oranges, perhaps, and the carrot, which is great. But the carrot was a symbol of veganism. And then we came in with Veganuary, and it was bright, and it was in your face, and it was uplifting, and it was non-judgmental as well. That was...
I think that's very key. I think that's very key to this. It felt like, get involved. You don't have to even do it beyond a month. No pressure. Come on, get stuck in, give it a try. Whereas prior to that, that had never been my energy. I'd been vegan for years, but I'd noticed quite a lot of the activism was go vegan now for life. Do not fail. Do not falter. If you do, you're awful. And that can be quite off-putting, but Veganuary didn't come with those kind of vibes.
No, and I think maybe it's because we were both at the start of that vegan journey as well. So
maybe a couple of years into being vegan ourselves.
I was, only a year. Yeah. But you maybe less jaded as we are now. Well, I'm full on with that opinion.
Succeed!
But at the time, it was, and the marketing team that we worked with was a company that you'd started with the window industry, so they weren't vegan. So I think that really helped having their perspective.
So you'd worked with them with the window industry.
Correct,
so
yeah.
Matt had been a double glazing salesman, but a bit more than that. You were the chair of a large trade show, etc., which is quite an amazing transition, which we'll talk about a bit later.
Okay.
The same marketing company. That surprises me.
Yeah, and they were real professionals as well. So we sat down with them, and they really understood what we were trying to do, but also they were looking at it as potential, people that might sign up. So I think they gave us some real good advice. But from the outset, we wanted to do something that looked very mainstream. I think in the early days, people thought we were some sort of Silicon Valley startup, but it was actually just me and Jane working from a kitchen in York, wasn't it? It was just the two of us. We had some people like Damien, who came on board helping with the social media. We had Karen Ridgers helped on the PR in that first year. So we did have some sort of consultants and advisors helping us, but it was really just the two of us working full time on it, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then I don't know if you remember in the early days, Sarah, so whereas Movember, you have the visual with the mustache, and they were saying, you need a visual. How do you get other people taking part? Because it's that everyone's going concept, everybody's doing it concept that we really want, that you'd used in the window industry. Can we replicate that for veganism? And so we had the wristbands.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I don't remember those.
We should bring them back. They were great.
Not when you had to post them out, they would.
Oh, yeah, that's a fulfillment nightmare, isn't it? Yeah. 25.8 million wristbands, Matt. Are you going to sign up for that?
So really, yeah, at one point we did live with Matthew's mum, so she had there were wristbands everywhere.
Shout out to Matthew's mum, who's actually listening to this podcast next door live. So she was posting out the wristbands, was she?
No, they're just taken over our home.
Okay. So is it a campaign or is it a movement?
Oh.
It's a campaign within a movement.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that it's a campaign within a movement. Yeah, I mean, we're part of it's a mix. It's a whole marketing mix, and we work alongside so many other talented people in the movement that are all doing other activations and interventions and trying different theories of change. And we support, all of that. We support Meat Free Mondays. We support Reducitarian messaging. We support Anonymous for the Voiceless being on the streets. It's like you try different methods, and Veganuary is just. My perspective is just one tool in the toolbox.
And I think that's so important because different campaigns and sort of types of activism will resonate with different people. So something that might repel someone will be the thing that crosses someone over to become vegan or veggie or whatever their pledge is. And I think it's really important to have that diversity of an ecosystem of everyone trying to make change, but in different ways. And they all feed into each other. There isn't kind of a right or wrong. On your LinkedIn, Matt, you say you're concentrating on movement strategy building. Are you aware it says that on your LinkedIn?
I'd forgotten I changed it, actually. But yeah, I mean, that's what I am. I spent the last 6-12 months thinking really about that, because for me, and I don't know what you think, Sarah, but it feels like the movement as a whole over the last few years has become increasingly burnt out. The progress has been too slow. We're winning in certain areas. I'm not saying that there isn't certain areas where there's success, but it's been a difficult few years. So I've been thinking a lot and talking with other people in the movement about how do we build a strategy that's a little bit more focused, that hopefully by being a little bit more strategic and rethinking things, we could reignite the movement. So that excites me. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do that, but we just need to reorganise ourselves.
And is a movement strategy similar to having a theory of change? Like, how would someone who's maybe trying to start a movement, build a movement, or start a campaign, start thinking strategically? What would you kind of what advice would you give them before they get stuck in?
Well, there's a book I'd recommend everybody reads called Change, How to Make Big Things Happen, Damon Centola. There's a lot of insight. It's really influenced me in terms of how social movements are born, how things spread, and the problem that we've got with our movement is it's not a simple contagion. It's not like we're trying to sell a particular soft drink that's easy for an influencer to just hold up and say everybody should buy this. We're actually wanting people to change who they are, how they think, what they eat 3 times a day. It's highly complex. So Damon Centola's theory is that you really need to look at social networks, and a lot of change happens at the network periphery. It happens in certain locations. It happens within social networks. So it could be Hackney might be where, things build from, for example, or it could be within the environmental movement or the environmental movement working with the animal rights movement and other social networks. And you get that social reinforcement. There's a whole range of different theories of change that come together at the same time. And that's how you start building things, getting to tipping points, and then you get the ripple effects that come from that. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to become a little bit more focused and build a strategy around that going forward.
And how important, I'm going to ask this to Jane, do you think joy and celebration is to kind of sustaining a movement and keeping people on track all the time and away from burnout?
I've not had enough of it. I think that's been the problem. But yeah,
More joy, more celebration needed.
It is. And actually, my go-to thought when you said that was if you remember, in the early days of Veganuary, we used to have an end of Veganuary party.
Oh yeah.
And we did away with it because it was cost, or the, organising
Normal
events.
reasons,
It's hard work, but they were, a real highlight come the end of it, because you never actually got to meet a lot of the participants. Their names in a database, they're a statistic figure, but going to those events and the participants would come and we could shake their hand and they could tell you the experience. And a lot of the times those people were saying, "You've changed my life this month." And it might be a health reason, or some people had said, "I'm giving up my job and I'm going to open a vegan shop, or I'm starting a vegan business." And that was real big wins, wasn't it? And motivation to keep you going after the end of January. Was feeling so burnt out.
Yeah, in London there's a WhatsApp group called Vegan Gang. I don't know if you're a member, Sarah.
No, I'm not. I try, and the WhatsApp can overwhelm my executive function, so I try and keep a distance from it. But
it's a really great community on WhatsApp, and I think it's socialising for social change. That's how I think about it, because a lot of you hear quite often about people that have tried vegan and vegetarianism, and then they, for whatever reason, they can't maintain it long term. I think I saw some research recently that 40% of the UK has tried vegan or vegetarian at some point in their lives.
That's a big number.
Yeah, but there's only maybe 8% of the UK population that is vegan or vegetarian. So 32% of people have dropped off. And the number one reason for that is, or one of the main reasons is those social pressures, or not feeling, when you've got friends and family that are not with you on it, it can be quite isolating. So if we can build community, people can socialise more, they feel safer. And I think that's how you maintain the levels of people that are on this journey with us, and how also you can build community and more people join us.
And have more joy and more
have more joy.
celebration. More joy, more celebration. And I think as well, when you're in community, you can set an example of how you navigate certain situations. Because, some people who are introvert, the thought of asking for something special that's not on a menu, or going around to someone's house and they've cooked everything specially for you and none of it's vegan, that is excruciating for some people. The thing that I've still not managed to get over is when someone gives you an unexpected gift. So the gift is unexpected. They're a neighbour or someone at the school gate, or something you just weren't expecting it. And they give you a gift, and I can see from the wrapper that it's not vegan, it's in the gift bag. And in that moment, I'm so surprised by the gift. After 28 years of being vegan, I've still not worked out how to say in that moment, "Thank you very much, but I can't accept this, I'm vegan." Even I struggle with that. And I think, and I'm quite a strong personality type. And so I can understand how people do find it hard, unless they're around community, to learn and see how you navigate that with ease and confidence, but also politeness in a way that doesn't get people's backs up. How did you guys go about doing that? Because you came to veganism quite late. You were 38, Matt, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you, Jane?
31.
How did you find the social interactions when you needed to say no thank you to the gift, or no thank you to Nan's cake, or no? How did you find that?
I'll go first. I mean, it's awkward, I would say, and I think there's I can't think I've ever had exactly that scenario where someone's given me a present that's been non-vegan. No, I can't remember. I don't have many friends though, so that could.
Well, no, I
explain
think
that.
it's more because you're such a vocal vegan.
Yeah.
Would you be getting gifts that weren't?
Yeah, but the one thing I remember, when I went vegan, which is now 14 years ago, it was in Wakefield in West Yorkshire. I was working in sort of a construction industry sort of environment. I'd never met another vegan at that point in time. So.
Oh wow, never.
Never. Yeah, there wasn't a lot around me in Wakefield, so I don't think I think I was vegetarian at that point in time, but I was probably the only vegetarian that I knew. So. People thought I was a bit weird, and that decision was like quite radical for people. So, and one of the things that I remember from those early days was I'd found out this new information, and it was so important. And I went out and told everybody about it, and I thought everybody would just like agree with me and join me, and very few people did. If nobody did, so then you go through a period of complete shock, like. What's going on here? I don't think I've ever got over it, but I suppose you do over time. You realise that social change is incredibly difficult, and I guess ultimately that's why we started Veganuary, because we were struggling maybe with our own friends and family to make a difference. So why not talk to everybody else's friends and family in a big way? That was the idea with Veganuary.
And you were from a butcher's family, weren't you, Matt?
Yeah, when I was on my mother's side, they were sort of a farming background and meat traders. So I visited slaughterhouses when I was a child, but it was a long time ago in my sort of primary school years.
And Jane, how about you? What was your family background and how did your veganism go down?
Better than, because I'd already been vegetarian. So I feel like that was the more noticeable change for my family at the time. And it wasn't unexpected. I'd always had this affinity with animals growing up. And I remember asking my mum, when I've got looking at an animal on my plate, did this animal feel pain to get here? And she was saying, no, they didn't. It's fine. And I found out different later on.
This moment where I realised the adults were lying to me as a child was really life-changing. I was 9 and I read an article in one of her magazines, Mum's magazines, about the journey an animal takes from the farm to the slaughterhouse. I remember the tears streaming down my face and I was like, you lied to me. She was like, what? You lied to me about everything. And then after that, I just didn't trust adults because I was like, wow, there's this other world they don't talk about. And it's a lot to realise at a young age, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I don't know if that's what she really believed, if the slaughter process could be, an animal is stunned and they don't feel anything. I don't know. She'd probably not thought about it, but she'd certainly, there was a moment, and I don't remember this, but we were watching The Fox and the Hounds and in the cinema, and we were on the front row, and it was the moment that the fox was about to be killed, and I stood up and yelled, no! In the middle of the cinema. My mum and my sister are pulling me back down again. But there was lots of instances like that through again, this affinity with animals but it wasn't until later, until I met a vegetarian, read some books at university, that made that switch.
Can you give me any examples of activism that you think does not work, but you continue to see time and time again?
Oh, controversial.
It is. Let's go there. But you can explain why you don't think it works. Oh. No.
Who do we want to piss off? Go on, you go first.
I'm just racking my brains, thinking.
In the abstract.
I mean, as you say, it's different types of activism will resonate with other people. So I think am I to say that doesn't work when somebody else might say, no, actually, Jane, that was the thing that made it for me. It might not have been for you, but it made the switch. But I mean, I know what I'm thinking, but I think maybe you're going to voice it.
Oh, you're hoping he is. You're like, Matt?
Well, I'm going to give you two things, actually.
Okay.
The first one's probably less controversial, which is that, when people get too judgmental and too tough with people, in terms of the use of language, then it can be off-putting for people. So I think we generally are on the pragmatic side. Can get a little bit radical every now and then, but on the whole, because we used to be meat eaters ourselves, I think we have to understand that that not everybody's evil just for eating meat, and so you've got to be patient with people. I think the more broader sort of movement level conversations around welfarism and abolitionism, and I think we're both very clearly abolitionists. You can speak for yourself, but and I understand how activism that's working on welfare commitments and welfare improvements do help, potentially help many of the animals that are alive today. But when it comes to the bigger picture of ending animal agriculture, I'm not sure there's a great deal of evidence that type of work and the amount of money that goes into that, the amount of really smart people.
It's really vast, that type of, that industry, that type of activism. There's a huge amount of money and resources that go. I didn't actually realise how much resource goes into sort of animal welfare as opposed to increasing veganism in terms of activism?
So I think if some of that money was redirected, and a lot of the really smart people, I mean, I'm friends with a lot of these people, and they're really, really smart individuals. I think if we were to redirect our resources to different types of theories of change, I think we would get to the end point quicker. They'll disagree with me, but it's a view that, I mean, I've gone from one side to the other through my whole sort of career in activism, but I've more recently come to the view that I'm not sure that, I'm not saying it doesn't work, I'm just saying that the end goal is going to be more difficult to achieve if we spend too much time and too much resources and money working on welfare commitments.
And I completely get that. And I also think as a vegan, you have to be very patient. You know, if your day-to-day is working on making a chicken's cage 5 centimetres bigger, I haven't got the personality type to tolerate that. You know, it's a very patient type of activism, if you ask me, that wouldn't suit me. I'd just be like, what? Like 5 centimetres bigger? You know, I can't dedicate myself to that. But I get it. And I love this discussion and this debate. And they say, was it only a fool never changes his mind?
I know.
And so you can think something one week and then a few months later, your thinking's evolved again. And it's good to just keep talking it through.
I think if somebody provided actual, because a lot of the effective altruists that are working on the welfare side will say that, well, it's all evidence based, you know, and, you know, we've got numbers on this. But what I've never seen is anybody on the welfare side actually saying, well, here is the evidence that by these incremental welfare changes, this is how we're going to end factory farming. Where is that evidence? I'm not sure I've seen it.
We went to a debate on this, so the debate has been going. It's never going to get resolved
This
at any
was 12
time.
years ago.
This was 12 years ago. So we went to a talk, and there was Gary Francione and Bruce Friedrich, and it was then, as it was known, it was the Animal Rights Conference. Now it's called AVA, and they were discussing this very thing. And Bruce got up first to speak, and he was putting forward some of the welfare arguments, and we were like, "Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense." And then Gary, and we were like, "Oh, well, that makes sense."
It's difficult.
But you know, Bruce's point, and this is still stuck with me, is that he was saying, if I'm a hen and I'm in that cage now, I want someone fighting for me. And I thought, God, he's right. He's right. We need to help her. She's suffering now. And we could do something about that. But we spent the majority of our time trying to help animals that haven't even been born yet, or stopping them from being born.
So again, we need both.
Yeah, if we had plenty of money, I would say, well, let's do both. But we don't have plenty of money. So my gut feeling is that we should be working on cultural societal change, really effective stuff, evidence-based, and better campaigns. And it doesn't mean a go vegan message. What I'm talking, that could be meat-free Mondays, that could be policy work, legal work. It could be, working in hospitals and universities and all these different institutions to try and get default veg or 100% plant-based on the menus. So it's all of that broad range of stuff, is my opinion. I'm probably going to ask you to cut all of this because I'm going to fall out with a lot of friends. But I think it is an important topic.
It's an important topic, and I think we're all grown up enough and we've got our big boy and girl panties on that we can agree to disagree, we can change our mind, and we can be inspired by different things. And we need to be mature enough to have those conversations without throwing our toys out the pram. So we should keep it in, and everyone is mature enough to take it. So tell me about your next campaign, which I believe was $1 Million Vegan. Was that the next one? Did you feel the pressure? Because Veganuary was so massive, that can kind of paralyse you into what's next. Because you're like, oh, it's got to be bigger, it's got to be more successful. Oh, crumbs, everyone's expecting a lot from us. How did you feel when you started something new?
That came from a conversation with one of our donors, actually. And I think at the time, well, Matthew, we will talk better to this, but he gets very excited at the beginning of the project. Well, anybody who's had a startup, you know that line graph of, oh, this is amazing, this is great, we've got all these ideas. And then obviously you crash and go, shit, this is fucking awful. So much work. And then you get
What
those,
was I thinking? Yeah. If I'd known this, I would never have started this. Yeah, I know that.
And then there are those other peaks of joy that you were talking about when you get your results. And I think, so from the start of a new campaign, you have all that energy and enthusiasm. And we definitely had that with it was $1 Million Vegan was the first campaign, and I think bribing the Pope Francis.
Yeah, I agree it's bribery, but we should actually frame what the campaign was. So we were offering $1 million to Pope Francis to go vegan for Lent, and the money would go to charity. So I don't know, is it a bribe?
Maybe a moral bribe. Maybe it's a nice one. It's a nice one. And I remember when I first heard that, I thought, well, that's quite random. And I was like, but they're very clever people. What's the thinking behind this? Is it press? You know, I didn't instantly get it in the way I did Veganuary, but it made me think. So what was the aim of it, really? What were the top line outcomes by asking Pope Francis to go vegan? Because I can't imagine you expected him to say yes.
We didn't. No.
I mean, I think it was about just raising awareness. So, you know, we knew from the start that Pope Francis couldn't. You can't be bribed as the Pope. Otherwise, everybody be doing it,
It
wouldn't
wasn't
they?
a bribe.
Yeah, well, or persuaded with $1 million to charity, whatever. No, we that was never our ultimate ambition. It was about raising awareness, and you know, the donor actually bullied us into probably doing the campaign in the first place.
Didn't take a lot of persuasion.
Yeah, it sounded like a fun campaign, so we did it willingly. But it was about, like, Pope Francis had written his encyclical Laudato Si, and it was all about...
What's that?
It was all about the environment. It's like a big text talking about how Christians and humans should really care about the planet. So we were like raising awareness. Hey, we agree with you. What about animal agriculture? You know, leading cause of climate change, a leading cause of pollution, deforestation, all this stuff. So we framed the whole ask around Pope Francis, you care about the same things that we do, and kindness and compassion to animals is obviously built into that. And I think it was in Laudato Si, in the encyclical. So, you know, we just wanted to like point that out. And a great way is during Lent, which is a time that people sort of abstain, and it's built into the Catholic philosophy to abstain. Let's abstain from meat consumption for that month. So, and it was pushing it to a mainstream audience, a conservative audience generally, a religious audience that are predominantly in Mediterranean, Latin American areas where vegan activism wasn't so strong. So it was about all of that, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, the thought being that he has been the most progressive pope by speaking out on these things, that we thought, right, if we were going to do this, this is the one. Obviously, Matthew and I are atheists, so it felt like, well, the ask can't come from us. It needs to really come from somebody else who's religious. And so when we floated the idea to Genesis Butler, who is, and I don't know if she's an amazing activist in the US. She was the youngest person ever to give a TEDx talk about animals, wasn't she, when she was 12? And so I think we were out for lunch with her, weren't we? And just casually mentioned, we've got this idea for a campaign. How would you feel about being involved?
Do you want to ask the Pope this?
Yeah.
And she went, yes, absolutely, yeah. There was no hesitation. She
actually visited the Vatican and actually got inside and met the Pope's second in command, Father somebody or other, I can't remember now.
Can't remember his name, but
and she presented a long letter which had a load of signatories on it. You know, Sir Paul McCartney, Moby, Joaquin Phoenix,
scientists,
Jane Land,
key people
had all signed
vegan
it.
royalty.
Yeah, and presented it to the Vatican, and she got a letter from Pope Francis himself, sent to her home in Los Angeles, thanking her for the campaign and blessing her, and sort of blessing the campaign. So, but he didn't commit to going vegan for Lent.
Pope Francis didn't go all the way, but very nice letter, very nice response. Yeah. Wow. And so do you think it met the aims? Did it get picked up by media? Did it get out there, or was it just talked about within vegan circles, or did it go wider?
It was. Do you remember the first day? It exploded. We already had an article lined up with The Guardian, so that went live, and then I think I can't remember on my Facebook. I remember doing a post, and I think it was like 84 pieces of media in the very first 24 hours when we launched it.
Including more right-leaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, as Matthew said, we had campaign managers in all the countries. So it was an international campaign. So we were in Germany and Spain and Italy. We had in the US. So and obviously that was building. Each of those were building towards the launch, and so I think that was exploded. And we were on TV. Was it Sky News?
Yeah, but I think we had more news in other countries. It wasn't a big thing in the UK. It was more, I think Latin America did really well. Mexico and
Italy,
Argentina,
obviously.
Italy, yeah. So I think, was it a success? Well, the whole world's not vegan. So I always,
So everything's a failure.
You set the bar quite high, Matt, don't you? Yeah.
I mean, also, we didn't actually give $1 million to anybody. So it was a reasonably cheap campaign to run. And we got a load of brand awareness for it and got a lot of people thinking. So, sometimes it's very difficult to actually make a full judgment on this.
Well, the donor was so happy that he wanted us to continue because it was always going to just be a one-off campaign. Let's do it with the Pope and then we'll shut it down. It was just a one-time. But obviously, as you know, Generation Vegan is still going on.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's...
Yeah, Gen V, we call it now, is more of a platform, social media platform. So we're putting a lot of content out and doing all sorts of other things as well. So what started as just a one-hit wonder, let's just try one campaign, actually evolved into a sort of an organisation as well now.
I love Gen V. I love the work. I love the content. I really enjoy it. So thank you for that. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the counter campaign to Veganuary, which is the Agriculture and Horticulture Development Board's Eat Balanced campaign. So if anyone's not encountered this is a campaign that's put out to promote eating an increased amount of red meat, I believe. And it's come out for the last few years, and they really spend a lot of money around January, intentionally to counter Veganuary media. In some ways, it's the highest form of praise because it means they think Veganuary is really working and that it needs countering. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on this campaign?
Well, it's not about eating balanced. It's about eating red meat, so particularly beef, lamb and dairy is what all of the campaigning, from what I've seen, is around. So, yeah, they put millions into it.
5 million a year. Normally.
Yeah. I've been talking with colleagues for a while about it. So in the US, they call them check-off campaigns, where the industry all chips in money together to fund these sort of campaigns. So like in the US, there is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. They run a check-off campaign. In the 90s, they ran...
when you're saying check off, what do you mean, check off?
It's just the name that they call it. So it's like a centralised marketing fund. That and it's in the US, it's mandatory. So like for every head of cattle, I hate that term, but that $1 is given to this check-off program, which then, if you think about the amount of cows that are slaughtered in the US, that can be millions per year. And that's then put into these campaigns. So through the 90s in the US, they ran a campaign called Beef, It's What's for Dinner. Now, that has gone into the American psyche because it was just pumped year after year after year. And it works. That's why a lot of the beef industry is quite happy to continue putting money into a centralised fund. We need a vegan check-off.
We do, don't we?
Yeah, because it's difficult, but we're so underfunded, and a lot of the plant-based companies, they don't have spare capital. They've been struggling for the last few years, so it's going to be difficult to get one off the ground.
Deep breaths from Jane.
It's a big topic, and I think it's only going to get harder. So I very much, the quote that's attributed to Gandhi in that first they ignore you, which the first few years of Veganuary, we were just allowed to get away and the media was quite nice and supportive. Then they ridicule you. So we had the likes of Piers Morgan poking fun at us. We had Channel 4 doing something about anti-vegans. And then we had the explosion of vegan products, veganism being everywhere, very much on trend. And I was always in the background thinking, this bubble's going to burst. It cannot continue at this.
I knew that.
And then when it did, and the industry have gone into the and then they fight you stage, which they're very much in now, because you're right, Sarah, we are giving them something to worry about. They're seeing their market share decline. They are seeing veganism taken off. Of course, they're not going to stand for it. They're business and they're going to fight for us. But in me, it was kind of like, it's happened now. Let's get on with it. Fight. Go on.
But you're going to say, and then we win.
Then we win.
Then we win.
Yeah.
I like that. Then we win. That's
That's the end of
incoming.
Gandu.
But what I would say is, sorry to be like the negative person in the room here at the moment, but they're winning at the moment because that misinformation campaign's really hit home. And that's why a lot of the categories have been in decline in the US, UK, and many other countries over the last few years. I don't think my hope is they won't win long term, but it's really knocked us back because they've adopted the tobacco industry playbook, which the fossil fuel industry has done as well. So they create doubt. So they've been pushing this ultra-processed fake meat sort of messaging.
Which is wild because if you look at the amount of processed food in a supermarket, I don't know the exact percentages, but I imagine it's about 98% from the carnivore diet and 2% that might fall under the plant-based vegan category. So who should they be directing that at? It's quite bizarre, isn't it? But they've been incredibly successful with that messaging.
Yeah.
The first question I'm asked when I often tell people I'm vegan now, it used to be things like, what do you eat? Now the first thing out of someone's mouth is, do you eat that terribly processed vegan meat? This is the first thing they say. I had, you know, an old guy in the sauna the other day, do you eat those fake sausages? Said as if it was, you know, an assault on people's culinary, you know, integrity. It was the venom in his voice and the fear. And he goes, they're terribly bad for you. And I was like, I don't think they are, actually. I think that's quite wildly exaggerated. But it is amazing how they've put that at the tip of everyone's tongue.
Well, it's a coordinated effort. They've seen what's happened and they've organised them. They've done a brilliant job, the meat industry, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So there's a digital command centre in Denver that's social listening and sort of directing conversations online. They're funding PR. So there's the same PR company that was doing a lot of work for the tobacco industry is now working on meat. So they're pushing stories and seeding doubt and misinformation and disinformation to newspaper outlets. They're funding dodgy science. So science that's pro-meat and anti our sort of health messages is really reaching, you know, and it's been picked up by a lot of the right-wing media and people are seeing it and they believe it. And you know, people don't want to go vegan. They want to keep eating the meat. So it's very easy for them to believe that. But I do think we're going to reorganize ourselves. I think we're going to figure out how to counter these narratives because they've got some much bigger weak points than we have. I mean, look
The
what
truth.
Yeah. I mean, red meat, processed red meat, is a class 1
Number one
carcinogen.
carcinogen. Yeah,
Who's
exactly.
talking about that?
Well, and this is the point. And if you look at Brandolini's law, which is exactly what they're doing, you put out a flippant statement, which is plant-based or veganism is processed. And then what we're doing then as a movement is we're collectively running around trying to counter that instead of getting on with the job of being able to share the truth and talk about the real issues. So I think that's probably one of our strategy points is that sometimes we're just going to have to let that go and then go in with the real messages of truth and then make them run after us.
Well, quite, and also it's a chipping away. You know, my day job now, I work for plant-based health professionals as their campaign manager. And part of my campaign is working with hospitals to get them to adopt a plant-based by default approach to their menus.
Yeah.
And the work is happening. There's 1 million health professionals who are members of something called UK Hack, which is the UK Health Alliance on Climate Change. And they've all signed up to a Plant-Powered Planet pledge, which is saying plant-based meals need to be a default option in hospitals. It doesn't remove meat and dairy and fish as a choice, but everything is nudging people towards making a plant-based choice. And this work is happening and it won't go away, no matter what kind of culture war headlines are there. There's too many science-invested professionals that are invested in the truth. It just feels very bumpy now, but I have absolute faith that these changes will happen. I really do.
Well, we love plant-based health professionals, and we also are very, I mean, that in terms of a strategy, default veg in schools, in universities, in canteens is...
Veganism by stealth.
Yeah, and nudge theory. Going back to all the money going into welfare, if there was more people supporting that type of work, we would get to where we want quicker.
Because I think once you hit that 80%, if 80% are choosing the plant-based option more and it becomes normalised, that's such a massive change from where we are at now. And again, it's not the 100% message, but it really gets you there. And then people are far more likely to go, actually, this is quite easy. I enjoy these meals. They're delicious. Why aren't I going all the way and maybe becoming vegan, which is what my husband went vegan like that. I fed him amazing vegan food for years. And he said, I basically don't have a reason now to not go vegan. So I'm an intelligent man. I'm going to do it. But it just took him a few years to kind of go on that journey. And I think when he was exposed to the food long enough and how delicious it was and he felt good, he was like, I really have no leg to stand on now. I'm going to do it. And I think many people would do that. Many people. They just need to start. And they need schools and hospitals and institutions to be leading by example. So you go and eat a meal there and it's plant-based and it's delicious and it's amazing. And that's the change we really need to see so that people can experience that food without even really trying themselves, because whatever institution they're connected to is serving them the best plant-based food they can have. I mean, that would be really exciting for me.
Was he your first convert?
Oh, no, there were many more before that.
Oh,
So back
took a
in the
while.
day, I used to run an event called Skank and Grill at my house. And I was the only vegan except for a few reggae musicians. I was a reggae journalist at the time. This is a long time ago. And some of the reggae artists would come and they were idle, so they would eat vegan food. But everyone else wasn't. And I found they were so interested in the food. Like, what are these little sprouted mung beans? And what's this grain? And that, oh, we love eating at your house, Sarah. You feed us all this weird stuff we've never seen before. But people would write the recipes down. They'd try the meals out. And that's when I thought, wow, this is such a great type of activism. And it was kind of the seed that started Made in Hackney in many
Awesome.
ways.
I
Just
didn't know
like
that.
feeding people with joy and exposing them to lots of different ingredients. They'll eventually sort of come round to it. Let's talk a bit about business now. Because, Matt, you've made quite a big switch, really, from campaigning to the business world. You're a busy bee. When I look at your CV, I'm sort of a bit breathless. You're you're the co-founder of VFC, the MD at Veg Capital, and the chair at Vegan Food Group. How does that work? How do you fit that in a week?
Well, I think after the Veganuary, getting that off the ground, and my head, I get bored really quickly, and I need to move on to the next thing. Jane knows.
Is that said with a bit,
Can I
bit of
just-
frustration? Yeah.
Can I just say, in 12 years, I was dragged along with 11 different projects.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
nearly one a year.
I thought it was 12 in 12.
No,
Oh,
it
was
was
it? Oh,
11 and
okay.
12. But,
I wonder what I did
You
that
had
year.
a quiet year that year.
it was probably lockdown. Oh, no, that's when you started VFC
VFC.
during lockdown, wasn't it? But back to you.
But that to me is like a dizzying array of jobs that to me all sound like full time. So how does that work?
He delegates, Sarah. He delegates.
Well, that's pretty smart. So you delegate. Wow.
Yeah, I like the startup phase. Like, so Veganuary, I couldn't still be involved long term in Veganuary because I just get bored. And then we did $1 Million Vegan, and then we handed that over to Naomi to run the organisation. She's done an amazing job ever since. And then I think from memory, I was starting to get a bit burnt out with the activism side, and I think there was a lot of exciting movement in terms of plant-based innovation. This is talking about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. So I started thinking about maybe I could set up a venture capital fund. So I managed to get these mission-aligned investors to back me.
Just back me up a minute. I started to think I could set up a venture capital fund. Like, I'm from a very working class background. That sentence just... to me, it just feels so off limits to the average person. But you were just like, yeah, I'll set up a venture capital
that?
fund. Like, did you know much about it?
No, still don't.
Take me through that, because that is, for me, that's a real block. I've got a real big block around money and investment and large sums of money. And I think many people do, especially if you're not brought up around it. How do you just think, right, I'll start this, let's go? What do you do?
Well, so I guess I was looking at the whole space. Beyond Meat had taken off, and it had gone through an IPO. It had launched on the stock market, so there was a lot of excitement around that. Oatly was doing well. There was all these brands that were bringing money on. And so, I was really interested in that because originally, before activism, I was in business. I was an entrepreneur. Still am an entrepreneur, I guess. And I just, researching it and thinking, okay, so what is a venture capital fund? How do they operate?
Go on, tell people, what is a venture capital fund?
So how do I describe this? So a VC fund is a mechanism where the people that run that fund go raise a load of money. So they might raise £100 million. They'll close that off, and then they'll go and invest. They'll raise that money from investors, and then they'll take the investors' money and go and identify businesses that are exciting that you would go and invest in. So you might spread bet then across 10, 15, 20 investments, everything from $1 million here to 10 million here. So you put these seed investments into these businesses, and the hope is that over time, and the funds tend to run for about 10 years. And the idea is during that period of time, you put the investment in, those businesses will sell or they'll have a private equity deal. You get your money back. That goes back into the fund. And that 100 million turns into 200 million. And then the money's then redistributed to the investors, so they may double their money. Sometimes they half the money. It's obviously a risky business.
Sometimes they lose their money.
Sometimes they lose their money. So we were lucky that we only had one mission-aligned investor that put the money in. And what was different about Veg Capital is we were committed to give any profits we ever make back to charity. So that was the ethos. And that charity would be effective animal charities, in effect. So that was how Veg Capital was born. And then over the last 5 or 6 years, invested in about 30 different companies. 4 of them, I would say, were tech plays, so like precision fermentation, people working in the lab trying to create casein that replaces animal casein so that we can make better cheeses, down to brands like Chicken and Mummy Meegs, that's a chocolate brand, or Native Snacks, more like branded startups. It's been really tough the last 5 or 6 years. Almost like when we started it was like a peak. There was loads of money around, and then since then, unfortunately, a lot of the categories have been in decline. Money's dried up. A lot of the companies, not just within Veg Capital, but across the whole board that have been working in plant-based, have found that, where there was hoping for this exponential growth, it's actually been more like this. And obviously the meat industry misinformation hasn't helped. The cost of living crisis, the Ukraine war, COVID, all of these sort of big macro problems have affected things. So it's been a really difficult time. And then during that period of time, I spent a lot of time talking to founders, and they had all these great ideas. And me being an entrepreneur, it sort of scratched an itch for me that maybe I could be a founder as well. So while running Veg Capital, I set up VFC, Vegan Fried Chicken, with a chef who'd created an amazing product out of
Wasn't that in your local restaurant?
Yeah, well, we used to go to one in York, didn't we? And it was like half vegan, half meat was the restaurant. But Adam, the guy that ran the restaurant, just absolutely loved the vegan side. So he was like the first person in York to have the Beyond Burger on the menu, and he'd created this vegan fried chicken product. And when we used to go, that was, I never looked at the menu. I just ordered that every time. And then when COVID came around, I spoke with him, and I said, Adam, I'm really missing VFC, the vegan fried chicken. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'll cook some in my kitchen at home, and then I'll ship it to you. Obviously, we couldn't meet each other because it was right in the middle of a lockdown. But he posted some to us, or DHL'd it, and I put it in the oven, and it was just like what I'd had in the restaurant. So I rang him up and said, Adam, I think we should talk. I reckon we could sell this stuff.
And at that point, Jane, did you think, here we go, here we go? As it went in the oven, you were like, I can see what's incoming already.
There's a few more swear words involved.
So that was had the birth, I guess, of VFC, and that's been a journey in its own right. But I mean, we're still in a lot of retailers of VFC. But then a brand called Meatless Farm got into trouble. That one had raised 90 million, ran out of cash. They were Leeds based. We were in York, and the business went into administration, and it had about 15 million in sales at the time. A lot of the suppliers and customers were a bit annoyed because they couldn't get the product, and we went in and did a deal with the administrator to basically buy the brand and the intellectual property and the recipes.
So when you're buying, because, again, just to understand this, when you're buying a business that's in administration, can you essentially get a real bargain? Because they're sort of, they're going out, they're coming out the game. So you can, at administration point, you can buy something that you see has potential, but it's gone wrong for whatever reason. Yeah,
so you just buy the brand. So we bought the social media handles, which had hundreds of thousands of followers, and the website and everything. But we didn't buy any of the debt or any of the liabilities of the old company because we were just buying assets from an administrator. So we got a deal. It was a really good deal for us. And what we then did was the team that were running VFC were also then running this other brand. And then it starts to make sense because you got two brands with one team running it. It's a lot more efficient. And then we merged Clive's Pies into that, which was more of a veg-led brand. So we had chicken through VFC. We had sort of beef and pork and sausages and burgers through Meatless Farm. And then we had this pie thing, which was organic, veg-based. And then more recently, we bought a company in Germany called Tofu Town. And that's actually the biggest part of our business now. And then we decided to create this holding company called VFG, Vegan Food Group, which has got these four brands, VFC, Meatless Farm, Clive's and Tofu Town. So it's one centralised senior management team that run that.
Let me ask about that, because when I tried to grow a charity for 12 years, and I found that really difficult because as you grow, everyone's job expands, but their capacity as individual human beings doesn't. So you need to bolt on more capacity and pay for more roles, but somehow the new thing doesn't always pay for that. Like how do you do that sum of growing the staff, but taking on more companies, but not putting all your team in their box early because they're working like the clappers on 4 brands, not 1?
Well, it's a lot of jiggery pokery.
Right.
I must say. I mean, the key thing that we did was in the early days, I was CEO and I realised I'm not the right CEO for this business. I don't have the right skill set to run a food company. I certainly one with multiple brands. So we hired a guy called Dave Sparrow, who did know about how to build and scale a food company. So he's been running the business for the last few years. So again, it's what's the term you used when you hand over? Delegate. I delegated. So even now, like VFG, I probably work 2 or 3 days a month, on VFG.
But you have shares in it?
A small amount, yeah.
Small amount.
Yeah.
It's a lot to learn, if you've never been part of this world, it can feel very overwhelming, like a sort of secret world where people know about investments and businesses, and it's good to share because then people can get a handle on it.
It's all very secret. We can't discuss it on the podcast.
Whole new language that you're having to learn. Yeah.
And then let's talk a bit about VFC and the marketing, because that was always really fun. And I call it...
Well, Jane was involved in the early stages of that a lot.
I've heard about that. I'm going to ask you about that. I would call it troll baiting or troll engaging, where stuff that's been thrown at you as a diss, you actually turn it around to your advantage. And I believe you took great pleasure in doing some of that, Jane. So
where I got my joy from.
She was the best. Yeah, you became a bit obsessed with it for a while, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I mean, I've grown up in a very sarcastic household where that's just been, you've met my family, that's just how we banter with each other. And then I'm thinking, I get to do this for work. And I think that it was hard. Like, there's some balance where you think, oh, hang on, this troll you can't engage with. They're just too angry and potentially aggressive. But most of the time, I think that when you start having a bit of fun with these trolls, a lot of them really embraced it and got into that conversation. And I think some of the stuff was just hilarious. The one that we ended up using for a billboard, I remember where I was sitting at the desk upstairs. I'd just taken a mouthful of tea, and then this comment came up going, "I'd rather stick a wasp up my bum than eat your product." And I spat my tea out.
Yeah.
I was thinking, okay, how do I apply to this? It was just like, please don't do that to the poor wasp.
You loved these, didn't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, we put that one on billboards. So we put our product, and I'd rather stick a wasp up my bum as the message.
I mean, when we had a marketing agency for that, and they weren't vegans, and we, obviously we'd had a lot of experience with marketing with Veganuary, and we knew what worked, but they were very traditional in the marketing sense, and said, "Oh, we're going to go down this route for VFC," and we're like, "No, we want the first campaign.
We want wasps up the bum." Jokes.
Yeah. I'd rather eat dog poo wrapped in breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs, yeah.
There's so many good ones, weren't there?
And then so I'd find a little GIF with like someone breadcrumbs. So it's like, I've got a dog. I can arrange for this to be sent to you this afternoon. that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
But the first campaign, we went with the marketing agency's choice at the first time, and of course they got no engagement. I mean, people would have seen them when they were nice and beautifully done, but the second one we're like, no, this can we create this now? We're going to push this through. And it was actually a Instagram conversation, wasn't it? So it was a few back and forths that we had with the trolls that we ended up calling Cluckwits, and they took off, and everybody was.
Well, we did Cluckquit of the month then, didn't we? So people could vote on which was the biggest Cluckquit.
Nice.
People from outside the UK probably won't know what that means, really.
They can use their imagination. Yeah.
Okay. Something that rhymes with cluck. Yes.
But yeah, so we put them on, blasted them on the underground, and had telephone boxes, didn't we? And loads of people were just sharing them on social media and getting quite a lot of joy from them.
And do you think, it's important to have a laugh? And does it in some way make your activism more palatable when you can laugh at yourself and, and embrace humour like that? Because not all activists can.
I think you need to keep sane, really. Well, I do anyway. I can't be that serious and straight-laced all the time, and you need an outlet. And I think, when I embrace those stereotypes. I gave a presentation just recently, and the first slide is, I don't know if you've seen the meme where the boy's in the classroom and all his veins are popping out of his head, and I just said, this is me when I haven't talked about veganism for 5 minutes. I'm really leaning into that. This is all we want to talk about, because it is my favourite topic. I do want to embrace that stereotype. I can talk about it all the time, and people say, "Oh, you look a bit pasty," and I go, "Oh yeah, it's veganism, isn't it?" And I was like, "No, I just look like this beforehand."
And it's that joke, isn't it? How can you tell if you meet a vegan at a party? Don't worry, they'll soon tell you. That old chestnut.
Yeah.
That old chestnut.
Yeah.
But I think more generally, humour sells, doesn't it? Yeah. Look at Oatly. I mean, they've done particularly well as soon as they sort of added humour to their marketing, and it really took off. The guys at this, I think they did some weird stuff, but they did a lot of good stuff as well.
Yeah, but it builds bridges, I find. Like at Made in Hackney, which is a vegan community cookery school I set up in 2012, and in one of the participants was an elderly Irish guy, and he always used to come in an apron that said "big sausage" and an arrow pointing down. And I just thought it was hilarious. And someone was like, "Oh, do you think that might offend some of the other participants?" I was like, if it does, it's not my problem. I think it's brilliant. Let the apron roll. But it's you build bridges, you accept each other if you can just find a bit of humour and a bit of joy.
It'd been funnier if it's had a little sausage.
Well, possibly, but I really enjoy. I don't mind people ribbing me. I don't mind people taking the mick out of me for being vegan if it's good natured. If you can tell if it's good natured or if it's genuinely aggressive. There's a difference, I think.
I find it endearing. I think maybe going back to how I've been raised, that was part of inclusiveness. If you're not taking the piss out of me, then am I even involved in this?
Do you even like me?
Exactly.
So I've heard on the grapevine that the vegan food industry is heading into really rocky times, rockier than now. Like it's going to actually get more challenging and worse. And that, like what you're doing with your consolidations and many brands under one roof, that is going to be the key to survival. Would you agree? Can independents strike out on their own and do their own thing right now? Or is there going to be strength in numbers if we're going to survive the next sort of 5 to 10 years as new vegan businesses?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball.
No?
No. I mean, it is that the data at the moment is showing that there's been continuous decline in sales of meat alternatives. So this would be the products that the meat industry have said are ultra processed and fake and what have you. Some categories have been in growth: tofu, tempeh, more veg-led products have bucked the trend to some extent. So it's a mixed picture.
And plant milks keep
Yeah,
growing.
some of the dairy alternatives are doing well. But the backdrop is that a lot of companies were started. There was a real sort of plant-based bubble, if you like. There was a lot of money came in, and there's been a correction, if you like. And then the retailers are a bit unsure, to be honest, about what to do. A lot of them have started cutting back on space. So it's been a double whammy for a lot of the brands that, firstly, the rate of sale hasn't been as high as they would have hoped, because consumers, for whatever reason, or various reasons, have gone cool on the category. And then at the same time, the retailers have reduced the space. So it's been so there's less space for all of the brands to compete with. So a lot of the retailers have rationalised, which meant that a lot of the smaller brands have just been removed from the shelf, from the fixture. But even the big players like Quorn, for example, the biggest, still had very, very poor results last year, like losing lots of money. So Beyond Meat, obviously that's a publicly listed company, and that's had a really hard time over the last few years as well. So yeah, it's not great. I am hopeful that as a movement we will reorganize ourselves and come back stronger, but it's going to take a while. They often talk about, what's that cycle where you have the trough of disillusionment, where it goes like this and then it comes down, and then it's sort of, we're in the trough of disillusionment, but then you go through to like the path of enlightenment or something they call it. My hope is that we've got the enlightenment phase coming next, because the underlying reasons why people should eat alternatives to meat are still the same. You know, it's still,
They're more urgent now than ever.
Yeah.
And so many people who aren't so moved by animal welfare are moved by sustainability, and that's what's shifting them to take action.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, I don't mind. Whatever motivates you, as long as the end result is the same. But I feel the same way, that we're in this sort of, we peaked. And I knew, like you, Jane, I thought, that's not going to last, because everyone's throwing money around, everyone's excited, they're chucking money into loads of different businesses, everyone wants a piece of it, maybe making some reckless decisions, and there's only going to be a few survivors out of that. That's just my very non-business-based assessment about what was going on, but I could see it coming. I didn't think we'd pop quite so badly. Like, we went from having like 20 vegan markets in London and New York to having like 2. I didn't think it would be quite such a steep drop off, but I did think that's what would happen.
That being said, some of the vegan restaurants in York that I've been to recently are still buzzing,
Right.
And I think
In London's.
in London, where did I say?
You said York.
All right. Oh, the ones in York are not doing so well, are they? There's only 1, 2 in York. Anyway.
There's only been there's a vegetarian one. But,
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. But yeah, no, it's my gut feeling is I think we're probably just at the bottom now and plateauing, and things will get better.
The only way is up, as Yaz said
Yeah.
in the
Unless it's
80s.
down. Yeah.
I think that pop came at why it was so harsh is because obviously we had COVID and then the cost of living crisis, and it all just compounded to make it as disastrous as it was.
And the meat industry did a great job, as I said. That I think that is the key thing, actually, is that misinformation that was spread, and we weren't prepared. still not fully prepared for dealing with it. Sorry, that was a bit serious.
That's fine. Jane, you're now a trustee at Veg Trust. Why do you do this work? What is Veg Trust about? What kind of work are you funding?
Veg Trust came about from Veg Capital,
Right.
which was, as Matthew talked about earlier, any exits from those businesses we were going to donate, or we are going to donate to charity.
Well, given what we've just discussed, is there any money left to donate?
No money is
Coming
actually
soon.
Incoming.
soon.
Okay.
But in preparation for those exits, we thought, well, rather than, because we had been limited to give it to registered charities, and we know that more than just registered charities are doing great work. So there are non-profits, there are individual activists. So we thought, well, we need to create an entity where we can distribute those funds. So that's where Veg Trust came from. And whilst we were setting it up, we then started having a conversation with another trust called the Matthew Ayton Animal Welfare. And their board was disbanding, and they were thinking about just distributing all the funds in one go. But rather than doing that, which probably wouldn't have been the best thing for animals, they said, look, our charitable objectives are very much aligned. Should we do a merger? Great. So we absorbed their money, which is what we're focusing on now until the money comes from Veg Capital.
Yeah.
We're using those funds to give to animal activists. And we've just made a recent change this year, is that we're going to focus those funds on animal advocacy within the UK. Whereas before it's been, I think we've had much more of a scattergun approach, and we're doing international grants. But the feeling being is that the UK is closer to a tipping point than any other country. We've got more accessibility for vegan food here. The media, what they say here gets spread across the world. We've got stronger animal welfare laws, so that stands us in good stead as well. And we're here. So we get to actually see it and experience it and measure those changes viscerally, as well as, with data evaluation. So yeah, it's been a change for Veg Trust, but that's what we are doing from 2025 onwards.
And how can people apply, as an individual, as a charity, as a business even, is it all online? How do they go about that?
Yeah, so there's a website, vegtrust.com. We are limited to giving to non-profits. So right. Yeah, if it's a business side of things, I'm sorry, we can't support you. But yeah, anybody who's doing charitable, non-profit, volunteering work, come to the website. You will submit an initial inquiry. You'll also see we've got FAQs and grant guidelines of the particular areas that we're looking to support, and so you'll be able to get all the information from there.
Fab. Now, you both have had a very successful personal and professional collaboration and relationship. What is the secret to that? Because many people, that are together for a long time have a blazing row and they don't work together anymore, and that's that. Whereas you're still here 10 or 12 years later, collaborating and working together. How'd you do it?
I think alluded to earlier that the dynamic that we've got is that I think that the way that we deal with projects is very different and complementary is probably the best way. As I say, Matthew is more bigger picture, coming up with the ideas, and then I will come in and do the planning and the groundwork to make it a reality. And that's kind of worked, hasn't it?
Yeah, I realise I'm probably not the easiest person to be around all the time. Jane's naturally quite patient, and like with the early days of Veganuary, I think I was the big mouth that was going out there and talking about it a lot on social media and what have you. So I think I probably became more of the face of Veganuary than... Well, it was often the two of us, but I was the louder of the two of us. But the reality is that Jane was doing most of the work. She was the one that was keeping things on track, because I'm quite chaotic, Right. So I think she's been very patient. These days we're working more separately. We're working, I guess, in tandem in terms of the movement, but in terms of day to day, it's a lot less. So I'm no longer a trustee of Veganuary. I'm an ambassador, but I don't get involved at all in any of the day-to-day decisions or operations or any of that sort of stuff. Veg Trust is the other area where we're both on the board of Veg Trust, but Jane runs it. She does all of the work.
There's a theme building.
Yeah. Well,
I'm glad you said that, Sarah.
yeah,
I've
but
spotted a theme. Yeah.
but you're not as involved anymore in the food side of it, the vegan food
No,
group,
I'm not, no.
or Veg Capital so much. So we're just sort of
We found our own areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when Veganuary got, I think, past that startup phase into serious, we're a registered charity now, and all the governance that goes with that, Matthew was very much like, well, see ya.
I'm out of here. It's quite dry at that point, isn't it? I know that from setting up a charity. There's a lot of dryness behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Essential, but
Yeah. And there's been a running joke in my family. Like I say, Matthew, I am the introvert. Why go big when you can go home? That is my attitude, because I just find that really, really hard. I obviously pushed myself over the years, but the running joke in my family is that I'm sort of the grey woman. I'm just not very memorable, and
that's not true.
that's not true.
No.
They always say, don't they? Oh, you're the woman that stands next to Matthew Glover.
I'm outraged on your behalf. I'm outraged.
But I mean, that's just how we've played it, isn't it? If I did push myself, but I don't want that role, Sarah. I'm quite happy being where I am and doing the background stuff and pushing you forward.
I struggle with bureaucracy and administration stuff. It's not interesting to me.
It's slow. It's really slow and tedious.
My brain just can't deal with it at all. It's just boring, isn't it? So
I feel you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the startup phase is what really excites me. So I mean, I'm thinking about the next thing right now. It's like, what am I doing next? And then I just leave a lot of chaos behind me for other people to deal with.
And then how do you sort of treat and appreciate each other to sustain a successful working relationship and collaboration? Because it's more than just complementary skill sets. You can have complementary skill sets and be rowing. How do you keep working together and appreciating each other so that you can keep doing what you do?
Well, like I said, we're not like in each other's laps anymore at all. And we don't even live together. So we're working separately other than just like bits and pieces of work together. So we're still really, really good friends. We get on with each other incredibly well. We think similarly, I think, in terms of, what needs to be done, I would say. So I think that works well. We don't argue. Certainly not around work-related stuff, because I think we are so aligned. I think if you look back at the formation of Veganuary, I think the fact that I was more extrovert, she was more introvert, the skills that I brought and the skills that Jane brought, they were so complementary, worked so well together that I think that probably is one of the reasons why it was successful.
I think, you know each other, so as Matthew said, he can be quite a difficult person to work for.
Not work for, work with.
I was talking about other people who'd worked with you, but working with and for. I mean, it's that's not brand new information for you, is it?
Why are you difficult to work with? Just because you're new ideas, or over expectations?
Yeah, I think I'm quite demanding. I've in the past, I've really expected everybody to be as enthusiastic and excited about things as I am, and other people prioritise, their families and work-life balance and stuff, which I'm learning. I'm really trying my best to find other things interesting, but I've been a little bit sort of obsessive, I would say, about the cause. My life really changed when I saw this video and went vegan. Like, something clicked in my brain and it just became the most important thing. 14 years later, it's still the most important thing. It's like almost obsessive, isn't it?
Yeah. So in knowing him and knowing that, okay, is getting quite stressed about this particular thing, and you've got that relationship where, okay, I understand that, or you didn't mean to voice it like that, and yeah, sometimes maybe how you word things, and like I'd often, he goes, I need to send this email, will you proof it for me? Have I got the tone
police it
yeah.
for me? Yes.
I used to do that a lot, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But knowing someone so well, so you're not taking that offence. Whereas, if maybe someone that you're not spending so much time with and you don't know them, and you think, okay, I didn't know, it didn't mean to come across like that. There's more understanding there.
And that's really critical, because I found once the Made in Hackney team grew from 2 people to 12, I realised how much I naturally cut people slack by saying, I don't think they meant it to came over like that. They must have been stressed. They must have been this. Not everyone does that. And the managing people to have harmonious human dynamics is exhausting. And no wonder you have HR departments, because not everyone is wired up to go, oh, must have been an off day, never mind, and just move on. It's to have that compassion, to be like, okay, he must be feeling this or this. I'm not going to take it on. I'm not going to take it personally. It sounds like that's been quite key.
Yeah, and I think, but you're right. It's throughout all of this, since we started activism 12 years ago, the hardest thing has not been dealing with animal agriculture. It's been managing people.
It's so hard.
Yeah. Yeah,
Not
sure.
working with people. I mean, it's not just managing them. It's difficult, and we're always learning. I think I'm probably getting better.
You'd hope so after all this time, because but neither of us came into. Well, I suppose you'd been in. Yeah, the wind, but I guess it was a different sort of industry, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I went from a very male, white, middle-aged sort of group of peers around me, probably quite conservative in their views on socially conservative, to vegans, which are like very different, very different crowd. So I had to learn very fast about all this stuff. So yeah, and I'm still learning all the time. Yeah.
And I found it was a huge learning curve for me when I was building Made in Hackney, because I started just like you. I was obsessed. There was no such thing as a working day or a weekend. It's like that lady off Bridgerton. A weekend? What is the concept of a weekend? Because I just worked all the time at night. And now I look back on that and think how rude that I was putting that on other people. And the people I respect the most on that journey was a member of staff who told me to restrain myself. At the time, I was shocked, but now that whenever I want to fire off an email at the weekend without hitting the scheduling button, I think I remember that, restrain yourself. Someone else told me I was a micromanager. Deeply grateful for that. Never micromanaged again. I think after that, I sort of slightly let go a bit too much. But when people are brave enough to give you feedback, you can then improve at how you work with people. And finding my off switch so that I could enjoy family, enjoy hobbies, enjoy not thinking about work and the movement has been the greatest gift to me. And that was only really about 4 years ago when my health started to decline, my mum started to get ill, and I was really forced into taking a step down and taking my foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
Because it was just on the accelerator constantly. And you either take it off yourself or life will go, okay, sister, that's your lot. You need to wind down a little bit. But have you found your off switch yet, Matt?
I decided to go on a 3-month sabbatical in the spring of last year. I did 3 weeks. I was so bored.
Oh, wow.
I was just like, because I put them out of office on. I had somebody like responding to my emails.
Did you have hobbies lined up, though? You've got to have things lined up. You've got to have, like, goals.
I went on a Buddhist meditation retreat in Scotland for a week. And at the time, I used to have a Fitbit watch on. And it was really weird because my resting heartbeat, because you can track it, went down to the lowest level. It's, and it's like for a whole week, my resting heartbeat was like incredibly low. So I was so chilled out. And then I came home and my heartbeat went back up again and started thinking about things and went back to work, and it's back to normal now, obviously. I don't know. I just don't think I'm overly happy unless I've got serious things to be thinking about. So I need to learn. I don't think I'm as bad. I mean, you know, years ago I would have been working 7 days a week, wouldn't I? Well, both were really, and evenings and all the time, and it's not that bad anymore.
Jane, do you have an off switch, an off button?
I think I've really, I do like give myself weekends and evenings sometimes.
Sometimes. Oh, you devil, you.
And it's and I guess not living together now and not having that, because what we found that we talk, even if we went for a walk or even over dinner, we're just talking about work.
Yeah.
So I don't have that so much now, which gives you a breather and lessens the intensity. And I've always maintained relationships with my friends, and I've got a very close relationship with my family, and my sister's very close to proximity to where I live. So I fill my life with other things. So yeah, it's busy, but it's much more balanced in that regard. But I do remember in the early days when you were upstairs and you shouted down to me, I can't remember what time it was, midnight, 1 o'clock, and are you going to bed? And I was like, are people still eating animals? And you went, yeah. And I went, my work's not done then. And I've
that was going to be a long night. That was going to be a long night, Jane.
Reined it in since then.
I've noticed you're still responding to emails on the evenings, so I think you might still be doing it a little bit, to be honest. Yeah.
And then something people also struggle with is knowing when to accept something's ended. And that's whether it's your time at Veganuary or at Generation V. You know, it can be really hard to step away from something that you love. How do you know? I mean, maybe less so for you, Matt, because you're like, I want the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. But I found it very hard to leave Made in Hackney. It was my first baby. And, you know, I nurtured it and grew it, and it was my everything. But I'd always intended one day it would stand on its own 2 feet and fly without me. But it's easy to say that and difficult to deliver it and actually wind down and step down. How did you find leaving Veganuary from being in all the operations and being involved in everything? I'm going to ask Jane first that.
I found it relatively easy.
Did you?
Well, just because I was so burnt out.
Right.
2018, I think, wasn't it?
I think you were relieved.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of, oh gosh, just to be able to. I think that the trickiest thing was finding the right person to hand it over to, and we'd worked with Ria on the $1 Million Vegan campaign. She ran the Germany operation of that campaign. We did know her from beforehand, but got on really well with her. She was an incredible activist. And so when that campaign came to an end, we just said, you know, what are you up to now, Ria?
And you'd been planning this for a while, this sort of like who would take your legacy on, who would build on it?
Well, we'd had another CEO for a year or two, which
Which
it wasn't a perfect fit.
Wasn't perfect fit, yeah. And
but Ria was.
And then that did make you wobble. You're thinking, well, can I actually give it up? Because I mean, there's so much. You know, nobody's going to run it exactly how you're going to run it,
and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all.
Exactly, yeah. But we knew that this person, it just wasn't. It was going in a really different direction. But whereas we knew with Ria that we were much more aligned, and didn't really have any doubts that she would do an incredible job with it. And she hasn't. She's run the campaign and. Today, actually, quite poignantly, is her last day of Veganuary.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she's been with us 6 years, and you know, we've burnt her out. No, she'd already been from a quite intense role, and then we convinced her to come and take this one. And I think really she probably could have done with the rest then, but she didn't. And she took this and. She's taken Veganuary to a new heights, professionalised it, grown a strong team around her, and. She's leaving to have a rest and a recharge.
Nice. And it is so beautiful to watch something you've set up fly without you. I take great pleasure in, not every day, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, I look at the Made in Hackney Instagram and I'm like, look at it go. Look at my baby going. It's now like 18 and just doing its thing, and it doesn't need me.
Yeah.
It doesn't need me anymore. And that's, you've done a good job. And like my niece moved out of our house this week. She's been with us for 12 years. And I have that similar feeling of like, I'm really sad she's going, but I'm also quite proud because you don't want to encourage codependency. You
Yeah.
want your organisations or your people or your youngsters or whoever it is to be able to fly without you, but holding that learning and that work that you put into them. So it must be nice for you to see that the campaign has just grown and grown without you guys there.
Yeah, found someone better than you. That's what we did, and she had the skill set that needed to take Veganuary to where it's gone. I could never have done that. I think we were the right people to start it.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, to grow it, it was definitely needed somebody else. And yeah, it's so. I mean, I knew we could never hold on for forever. But it's been, she's handing it over to our international director, Wendy Matthews. She's going to be taking over as CEO from Monday, and I'm equally excited about her being in the post. So it's lots of good vibes about this. Yeah.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about food. So, Jane, we ask all our guests this. What is your favourite vegan recipe and why?
My favourite vegan recipe is a mushroom and walnut Wellington.
A classic.
Classic. And it comes from, and it's a shameless plug, from the Veganuary cookbook, which was published last year, put together by Kate Fowler. We were all testing the recipes before it went in. And this was one, that I tested, and I was looking through it. I think I want to test this one, and I made it for Christmas that year. It was a winner all round, wasn't it? And then I've since made it several times since, and it's the staple at Christmas.
And that's the test. So apparently we make 5 recipes on average for every recipe book we buy. So there's 70 in there, and on average people make 5. So if you've got one that you go back to again and again and again, it was worth buying the book for that one recipe, apparently. And I'm from Lincolnshire as well. I don't know if you know that, because Grimsby, where you're from,
I am,
Jane,
yes.
is North East Lincolnshire. I'm from Grantham in Lincolnshire. And as I'm talking to you, I've felt my accent get stronger and stronger again after it being Londonised for 20 years. But pie, that sort of pie culture, pastry and meat is so ingrained that something like a Wellington must be quite comforting.
Yeah, a bit of stodge.
A bit of stodge. And what I found really interesting is I asked Matt for a favourite recipe, and Matt was like, "Oh, I'm not very food motivated. What about Deliveroo?" And I was like, "Wow," because I am a stomach-led person. I've surrounded myself by foodies, built a cookery school. When someone says that, I'm like, "Pardon? What do you mean you don't think about food?"
I know you're not going to understand it, are you? But for me, like, time is money, and like cooking's it just gets in the way. But this is, I realise I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong.
There's no wrong.
I know I'm
You're
wrong.
just different.
Yeah.
You're just wired differently to me.
So I don't have a favourite recipe. Deliveroo, I've got favourite places, like Tofu Vegan. I order from them all the time. Mildred's, just get the food delivered really quick, get it down, get back to work.
Is it food as fuel?
I like the tasty stuff as well.
Right, you do enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I like
you're not
a
one
bit
of
of
those people
spice.
that say, "Oh, I could replace food with a capsule." That's very strange.
No,
Not quite
I
there.
do enjoy my food, so I eat out quite a lot. Because when you don't cook yourself, really, I do breakfast, like granola, milk, some blueberries, job done, nice
If
and
you've
quick.
bought the granola, that's not making breakfast.
No.
All good. So we're going to talk about some Meet the Vegans, Pass It On now. So your recommendations for things that might inspire other people, that have inspired you. So first, I know you've got some notes in case you forget, but that's all good. A book that has inspired you, Jane, and why?
The one I want to talk about is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. And I think you have these texts that are inspirational in particular moments of your life. And for me, that was the book that I was reading when I was going from vegetarian to vegan when we met. And it's a personal journey of Jonathan. He's had his first child, and he's thinking about what to feed that child and taking an interest in the food system. So he goes on this journey exploring about the meat industry, animal agriculture, and what he discovers along the way. And there's a graphic scene in that sticks in my memory. I was in my mum's front room reading it, and it was the dairy industry. And obviously I was learning about male calves and that separation and all the horrors that are involved in that. But what I hadn't realised was that a certain percentage of dairy cows are pregnant when they go to slaughter. And it was a scene that he was describing in that. And she's coming along to the kill floor, having her throat slit, and the calf's kicking to come out of her. And I was just sobbing. My mum comes in, she's going, I'm going to take this book off, you know.
I think you've had enough, love, for tonight. Yeah.
But it was, you know, that's a very grim spoiler, and it's not too much graphic stuff. It's just really insightful and powerful. And I think anybody who is an open-minded omnivore or, you know, is thinking about making that transition, I think it's just a very eye-opening book. And can I sneak another one in?
Oh, go on.
Just on that theme, people who are looking to make the transition to vegan, well, they're just interested in giving it a try. Kate Fowler, who wrote the cookbook, also did How to Go Vegan. She wrote this in 2017. We've updated it and got a new publication out in 2021. And it's the why, but more so the how to go vegan. Incredibly well written, really informative, useful guide. And excellent reviews on Amazon. So it's not just my biased opinion on it.
Thank you, Matt.
Well, I've already mentioned the book, actually, Change, How to Make Big Things Happen, Damon Centola. I'll read that again because I think everybody should buy it. Change, How to Make Big Things Happen, Damon Centola.
Is it an easy read? You're saying that and I'm feeling like, it's going to be very
it's all about social science and what have you. But I think anybody that's an activist and really cares about this movement, I think if they read the book and as they're reading, it doesn't mention animal agriculture, veganism, any of this at all, but just think about what lessons we can learn for our movement. And I think that's my main recommendation.
It's very accessible read.
Yeah. I need a good story. I need my lessons to be wrapped in a good story. But it sounds good. I'm gonna get this. I enjoyed Let My People Go Surfing by the founder of Patagonia, because that was a good story wrapped in the sort of theory, the business theory. Fab. A documentary.
I've chosen The End of Medicine because
Brilliant documentary. We hosted a screening at Plant-Based Health Professionals with 1,000 medical professionals attending online. It's an amazing and terrifying watch. Tell us about it.
It's very timely as well. It's looking at the health implications of animal agriculture in terms of pandemics and antibiotic resistance. So two aspects that we don't really get that much attention. You know, we're very much on the environment, animals and health, but these two factors about the other benefits of veganism are not really addressed. So and it's a very timely piece considering what we're going through now with chicken flu and you know, obviously we were just coming out of a pandemic. So and then there's another wonderful activist who's featured a lot in there, Dr. Alice Brough, who's the whistleblower from the pet industry now turned vegan, and she gives an excellent performance in that as well.
I'm going to go for Christspiracy.
I've not watched this yet.
Have you not?
No.
We should watch it. You can go to christspiracy.com and watch it there. And I think it's free, but the idea is you pay it forward. So you watch it to the end and then you sort of make a donation and you recommend friends to watch it as well. It's better than Cowspiracy.
Oh.
If you enjoyed Cowspiracy. There was also Seaspiracy. So there's a whole range of these spiracies. But it looks at, simple as what would Jesus do? What would Jesus' take be on animal agriculture and slaughtering animals today? And sort of looking back at, some of these old scriptures and, people just need to watch it. I'm atheist, but I found it still an interesting watch. And it really goes into the ethics and the morality of eating animals.
Sounds juicy. I'm gonna watch that this weekend. Next one is a person. So someone who work you've been inspired by that perhaps people aren't aware of, but should check them out.
mine people should be aware of. Do you want to go first?
Well, I was going to say Seth Tibbett. So he's the founder of Tofurkey. I think I liked Tofurkey because it's a bit like Veganuary. It's two words merged together, tofu and turkey, obviously. But Seth is officially the nicest man on the planet.
He's a real vegan legend. And
Yeah.
if you're not vegan, I hope there's lots of people who aren't vegan who also listen to this. But check
You've
out
met Seth, have you?
and his I have.
He's so nice.
At a convention, I met him, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't know me from Adam, but I remember
Yeah.
thinking, what a nice man.
Yeah, he set up Tofurkey like 40 years ago. And I mean, at the very early stages, he was focused on tempeh, and he spent 9 years working on tempeh. He was living in a tree house. He paid himself $27,000, not per year. That was over 9 years.
Wow.
So, he really bootstrapped that business. And then he came up with the concept of the tofu turkey, and that took off. And he built a business around that, and he bootstrapped it. And, it's you see Tofurkey products in all of the retailers in the US still. And he's just such a nice man, and he's an inspiration to me. And even though he's not involved in Tofurkey anymore, he's still a great ambassador for the movement. He's still so passionate about tempeh and tofu, and he's really interested in the history of vegetarianism and veganism. And he's just so enthusiastic about everything. And he's a Veganuary trustee
He's
as
also
well.
on the board of Veganuary.
Yeah,
He is.
yeah.
Oh, lucky you
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
What a lovely
Yeah.
guy to have as a trustee.
Yeah,
He's waving the Veganuary flag in the US for us.
yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then a person for you, Jane.
I went with Melanie Joy,
Oh.
which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of. She's a psychologist, Harvard University. She's done a lot of work for the movement. But I think why I wanted to mention her is because she had this unique area, which is on relationships. If you think about the best and worst moments in our lives, it's usually comes down to how we relate to somebody else, and we're never taught to effectively communicate with people. And I think she does an excellent job of showing us how. And she's written so many books. And I think for something else I was going to say about her. Oh, it was the work that, so not only how we communicate with omnivores and how we how do we choose our language and make more persuasive and take down barriers, but she also has done a lot of work on infighting with the movement. Anybody who's been vegan for 5 minutes will know they were not really a harmonious bunch a lot of the time. We can be, of course, but there is that, and it comes with every social justice movement. It's not unique to us. So she's done a lot of work around how we can get on with each other as well, which I think is really important.
Valuable work for
absolutely.
everyone.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yeah.
And then my last question to you both, which I ask everyone this question, is the world is going through some serious turbulence right now. I mean, it can feel like really dark days at times. What keeps you getting up every day as emphatic, compassionate people and not letting that suck you under, but you just keep going and keep doing what you do every day? Jane.
What gets me through the day
And to keep doing the work.
is, and what we say to people during Veganuary is going back to your why. Why am I here? Why am I doing it? And I gave a talk recently, and I ended it. It was mainly on sustainability, but I said, "Can I put in a few slides about animals?" And they said, "Yeah, okay, great." And how I ended it was, I said, I watch happy animal videos of animals who are farmed, because we rarely get to see them exhibiting these natural behaviours. We see them in cages and in barns. And so I wanted to show them animals on sanctuaries having fun, playing football, showing love to one another, exhibiting all those behaviours that we know that they're capable of. So I think for me, it's going through and watching videos like that and keeping them in the forefront of my mind, and as well as we see that enough of the horrendous stuff that's happening, but that's my why. That's why I'm getting up every day and carry on doing it when everything just feels a bit shit.
It's very important, the thing that carries you through.
Yeah.
Matt.
Well, I mean, simple. It's the animals. I think the first 38 years of my life, I was very centered on myself and trying to be successful in business and life. And then something switched in my brain, and ever since then, I've had a purpose. And I feel really lucky to have purpose in my life, because a lot of people don't. They're not really sure.
They say it's the number one protection against loneliness.
Yeah.
Is not having other people. That's secondary.
Yeah.
The first one is having a purpose.
Yeah. And, when I had the sabbatical, I tried to have a sabbatical last year, I was a little bit down, but I really feel like I've got my mojo back and I'm quite excited about things. And I think I've mentioned this a few times, but I'll repeat it, because a lot of people are burnt out at the moment and it feels like the movement's burnt out. But we have to keep going, and it's not a 100-meter sprint, our movement. I like to think of it as a relay race, and we're probably running the second leg, the activists that are around today, and somebody's passed the baton on to us, and we're going to pass the baton on to somebody else, and they're going to pass it on to somebody else, and we will get there at the end. We'll reach the finishing line. It might not be in our lifetimes, but we will get there. And the people that get there in the end wouldn't have been able to do it without the work that people before us did, people after us. And that actually gives me hope. It just keeps me motivated, and don't stress too much about getting the world that we want tomorrow, but knowing that we need to just keep pushing on.
Keep going. Oh, Matt and Jane, that was just wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me today, for being so candid and talking about your lives and your work. But most importantly, thank you for all your work. You are absolute inspirations and icons. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for having us on.
What a fantastic conversation with Jane Land and Matt Glover. I'm kind of feeling in awe at how humble and down to earth they are, despite how successful they've been. They've built one of the biggest campaigns in history, and yet they're so happy to just share their story. I think we can all relate to them and their journey and how they've gone about achieving what they have. There's so much to take away from this conversation, and I hope it inspires you as much as it has done me.